Ladies and gentlemen, if you can take your seats, if you wish to take a seat, there are some open seats, but you might have to get a little cozy. Luckily, it's in room with AC, so it's actually probably one of the more pleasant places we could be tonight. I'll be talking very briefly and then handing it over to our MC, Emerson Lin. We have a special announcement. We do have an American Sign Language interpreter on hand tonight. But basically, they will provide the service if there is someone here who needs the service, who's deaf or hard of hearing. So if there are any people here who would enjoy the service tonight, please raise your hand. Anyone else? We saw one hand go up. Okay. Okay, thank you, Lynette and Lisa. There are some sign-in sheets going around, and if you have one next to you, if you could just pass it around and, trying to keep passing it around until we hit someone who hasn't signed it yet. Without further ado, here is Emerson Lin, who is our MC for tonight.
Thank you. It's good to see you. And obviously, we have identified a subject of great local interest, okay? And I just want to get, a point of perspective. It was 2011, and it was right outside this door, that the first spade of dirt was turned in terms of the city's effort to renovate the city. And at that point, we were in great need and trying to step out of a long past of a downtown that was less than it could be. Anyway, beginning in 2011 and going forward, for 13 years, we've built this city up. And it's become, the storybook city of the state of Vermont and what we've done and how quickly we've done it. And that's due to the people who are sitting up here and all of you. And the point of that is that, we're proud of where we are, and we don't want to go back. And we're very committed to following patterns that don't allow us to go back. And public safety is one of them, and it's key. Okay? What we're going to do tonight, in obviously respecting the number of people here who have identified this as a key topic, we're going to let you talk. We want you to come up to the microphone. We want you to identify yourself, where you live, and speak two things. One, there are a lot of you here, and there are going to be a lot of people who want to speak. Please keep it moderately brief if we can, since we don't have time. And second, and most important, let's be respectful of one another. I mean, that's what has brought us here today, and that is what has taken us to the position that we're in St. Albans, is respecting the process and one another. What we're going to do is I'm going to start off with Tim, who will kind of set the stage. And then the people on the panel, I want everybody to introduce themselves and what they do. And when we finish that, then we'll go to the audience. It's utmost importance to be respectful, and it's also important to be brief in your comments. And without further ado, we will begin. Timmy? Thank you, Emerson.
Folks, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. I think this is excellent. We had our council meeting last Monday. We had 30 to 35 people show up to express their concern about the public safety issue. And I'd like to thank them for showing up. They were all respectful, understood we're all on the same page. They appreciated the police coverage that we have, with the understanding that they're maxed out. But we hope we can maintain that same level of courtesy, if you will, and professionalism when you speak. So we're looking forward to that. For me, a lifelong resident of St. Albans City, just as many of you are, and many of you in the audience have moved here because you like what St. Albans City had to offer. And my concern is there's a lot of crime, which is very prevalent. We all see it. We've all been, not all, but many of us have been victims. So we want to address that. I myself was in Walgreens the other night shopping with my daughter, and I watched a woman with a hood and a red bag round the aisles, load up her bag, and walk out the store. I yelled to her, told her to stop. She continued on her way as if there was nothing. And I think we're going to hear those stories nonstop throughout the night. And please understand that we want to leave here. We won't have a plan tonight as to how we want to address this, but we will be meeting and addressing all aspects of safety throughout the community. So once again, I thank you. You know, this is not an easy problem to solve, as you will hear. This is not an attack on the homeless. It's not an attack on the drug epidemic. It's a combination of many things throughout the community, and we hope we can work together to resolve some of these. It may cost more money down the road, and we hope you're all open to participating in those conversations, and hopefully we can make an impact on this, bring St. Albans back to why we live here, bring it back to why people visit here. So we want to do that, and we hope everyone here, and I see many new faces, I encourage you to get involved in this conversation, and let's move the conversation forward. So thank you.
Okay. Mo? So Mo, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go through this table, and then finish over here. Okay.
Thank you. As the mayor said, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. This is an important topic for the health and safety and betterment of our community. I wrote a lot of notes for this that I want to get out up front before we go to question and answer, because I'm hoping I can bring up most of the topics that I'm thinking you're going to want to talk about. I'm going to be looking down to go through this. I apologize for not looking at everybody as I'm speaking, but it's important to get these out, I believe. But I want to start with, first of all, I was born in this area and still live here. Most of my family and friends are here, so I have a real concern, just as all of you do, for this community. But currently, just to introduce myself, Maurice Lamoth, I'm the chief of the police department here in St. Albans, have been for 4 years, been with the PD for 5. I was with Vermont State Police for over 20 years. I retired from there as a commander of the barracks in St. Albans. So even with the state police, most of my career was in the northern barracks and concluded up here. So been very invested in this area for a long time. We've convened to address a range of issues that go from retail theft to theft from unlocked vehicles to loitering to drug sales. The underlying factor in all these crimes, I believe, is drug use among individuals in our area. Most of those people have a necessity to support the drug habit, and a lot of them also have some mental health issues that are involved in their life as well. Two important stats I'd like you to think about as I go through some of this stuff that came out just this week, or in the last week. In the last 24 hours, WCAX reported that an estimated 300% increase in unhoused population in Vermont since COVID. So it's important because that's one of the topics I'm sure we're going to talk about here tonight. That's a lot of people. It's a lot of extra people that simply don't have any place to live, and it's across the country, but it's here in Vermont as well. Secondly, the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns did a recent study that just came out in the last few days that polled all of the department heads and community heads in Vermont, talking about what the issues were in their towns all across Vermont. Number 1 and 2 were retail thefts and thefts from motor vehicles. So it's all across the state of Vermont. And what they blame it on? Drug use. So it's here. And what were also problems in those other towns? Mental health calls that police are dealing with and the impact it's having on them and the community members. So it's everywhere. We recognize it. And what's everybody doing about it? So what types of crimes are happening in our area? So we are right there. Retail theft from unlocked cars is one of our big ones. And calls from stores on retail theft. Those go from food to beverages to healthcare products, all the way up to clothing and tools and such in cars. One thing I'd like to tell all of you here is please don't leave weapons in your car. Sounds simple, but happens all the time. People are leaving guns in their car and they're missing. And that's a safety issue for all of us going down the road. Keep your guns out of your cars. In most of these cases I'm speaking about right now, meaning retail theft and theft from unlocked cars, most of those are misdemeanors. If there's a charge that comes out of this from us, goes on to the state's attorney. It's a misdemeanor charge. That means there's no immediate jail time. I don't care how many they do. I don't care what the circumstances are. Unless there's circumstances that allow us to ask the state's attorney, who then has to get it through the court, to lodge the person, it's just a misdemeanor charge, which means they get a citation and walks out the door the same day. It's frustrating. It's frustrating for us. It's frustrating for everybody at this table. It's the way it is. So a lot of these people are reoffending quite often. It takes a lot to get to a felony charge, and I'll go over that in just a second. Loitering. We have seen a massive uptick in loitering complaints on our end. And what I mean by that is community members calling and saying that, somebody's acting suspicious in or around their property and around their car. Sometimes they are up to something they shouldn't be doing, but a lot of times we're finding that it's just people that have no place to be. They're walking around all hours, day and night. There's no such thing as going down the street at 4 in the morning and seeing nobody. Somebody's out. More than one person is out. That's part of the population we have here now. I'm not saying it's good, bad, or otherwise. I'm just suggesting that there's a lot of unhoused population that doesn't have any place to be, and they're out. Some are up to no good, but some aren't. Some are just out. Impaired individuals. We don't have a detox system in St. Albans or in Franklin County anymore, nor does Chittenden County. That was a big hit to us last August. When I started this job 25 years ago, if somebody was incapacitated, meaning they couldn't take care of themselves due to their level of impairment, we could take them to a detox center. It was about an hour turnaround from the time an officer or trooper took custody of that person temporarily, brought them to a detox center, and let them on their way. Somebody was there to take care of them until they were under the .08 legal limit. That no longer exists. So if we are to take somebody into custody for incapacitation, which is a level higher than impairment, we have to take them to the hospital. That's per statute. What happens when you go to the hospital? It's not a nurse or somebody at the desk that looks at them, it's a doctor. I don't know how many of you have been to the hospital recently, but to see a doctor, there's a wait, a long wait. I'm not blaming the hospital at all. They're overworked just like we are and understaffed. However, we are now tying up an officer. It could be an hour, it could be 4 hours. That's not good, and that's the way the statute reads. Again, that happened last August. So it's a little bit of a strain on us. So unless somebody's incapacitated, meaning that they're showing signs that they cannot function for themselves, they're a danger to themselves or somebody else, we're not taking them. And that's for alcohol. So drugs are whole nother story. The hospital is not dealing with as well as often. And if there are behavioral issues, they still have to get brought to the hospital. Where they're denied, then they go to the correctional center. But they cannot bypass the hospital. That was a big hit. What is driving these cases? Again, it's drugs. The demand here is incredibly high. They're low cost, and the supply is huge. It's from crack cocaine to heroin to trank, which is here. It's all across the country. It's readily available. To pay for their habit, they have to get the money somewhere, and they'll get it wherever they can. It's an everyday hustle, and they're willing to work for it. Just give you an idea of where our calls for service are right now in comparison from last year. First 6 months for this year up to last Friday. First 6 months from last year up to June 10th. Robberies, in last year we had 2, this year we had 1, and that's a felony, so we went down. Burglaries, we had 12 last year, we had 9 this year, that's a felony, we went down. Vandalisms, we had 33 last year, we had 40 this year, we went up by 7. This is where it starts to change, okay? Larcenies for a motor vehicle, we had 47 last year, we have 63 this year. That went up. Retail thefts from stores, we had 37 last year, we have 161 this year. We went up. Trespassing, we went 23 last year, 103 this year. That one's a little interesting because that also includes trespassing notices that we're issuing. So there's a lot more people asking for trespass notices. A lot of stores, we're handing those out every day, all day. Stores that don't want people in their property anymore. So that number is inflated also because of that. And the last one is loitering. We had 10 calls for people loitering last year. We had 46 this year. So I guess my point in that is we understand it hits exactly what I talked about already. Retail theft, larceny from a motor vehicle is up. The other stuff, trespassing and loitering, could be the unhoused population, could be people walking around. Those are up. The felony crimes aren't up. In fact, they're down. Good, bad, or otherwise, that's where we're at right now. Drug enforcement. Drug enforcement in the police department's end is time-consuming and very complicated, and it's getting harder and harder and harder. And I'm not making excuses. We're still doing it. It's just harder to get a search warrant from the courts. It's a no fault of anybody sitting up here. It's hard to go against somebody's rights of privacy. To do that, you have to go in front of a judge, and they have to grant that warrant. It's a little hard. It's a lot harder now than it was 25 years ago to do it. We're still doing it. Our warrants now are getting much more dangerous. As some people here that may know that we did one Friday, we're doing them quite often. We're doing them primarily now we use the Vermont State Police Tactical Team, because that's what the level, there's threat assessments you do for every warrant. It doesn't take long before you hit a threat assessment. That means we need a SWAT team to do them. That's what you're going to see as these drug warrants start to happen. That's just reality of it. That's what it takes to do it safely. But we're putting the work into those. I'll give you an example of one we did last year, a year and a half ago on Messenger Street. We did a drug warrant. 5 suspects were arrested. They were released within a day from our state. They subsequently did a homicide in New York within a week. So those are the type of people that we're getting in these warrants. That's reality. What can we do? As a police department, we're establishing a drug and addiction unit. We're in the process. We wanted to kick it off July 1st. We won't have it up and running, but we should have the first person hired. They're in the final stages of the process. They should be hired by then or thereabouts, and they'll be in place in the fall. So and then we'll get the second person right behind them. We want the first person, that's going to be the supervisor, to have some say in who the second person is. But that'll be up and running. That'll help a lot. That was here 3 years ago, and it was very effective. It's called the Street Crimes Unit. It was very effective. Their sole mission is going to be drug interdiction and drug work. That'll help. What else is this area doing? Some property owners have come together and decided to clear up some areas that were notorious for drug use and loitering. You guys know where all of you know where that is. That's helped a lot. What's the downside of that? It's pushed people around. There are people that now were hanging out there that are other places. That's just what it is. So we are getting called to move people from other locations. That's fine. But it's caused a little bit more noticeability of people that were previously hanging out at one location. We have a grassroots movement that started right here from people in St. Albans with Brad Furland and Melinda White. Melinda's huge in the drug work and drug rehab and substance abuse, and in our area, everybody in this room probably knows her. We certainly know her. They started a program that's led to a summit in Essex that's happening in a few weeks. There's people here that care about that drug rehab and drug treatment, and it's coming out of this community, and it's great. So we have people that are trying and are working hard to do it. We use Melinda all the time at our PD. So I am winding down. I apologize. The big thing is if you see something, say something. I always say this. We get calls all the time about drug interdiction and drug work and drug houses and drug deals and this and that. If you don't see something from us, it doesn't mean we're not doing anything. It takes a lot to get a drug warrant. Just because you see 10 cars leave a house in a half an hour for 5-minute stops, we all suspect what's going on. It's not enough for a warrant. It's just not. If you see 2 people exchanging something, you don't know what it is. If you don't know definitively it's a regulated drug, it's not enough for a warrant. But all of that leads up to the case that leads to the warrant. It's important. It doesn't mean we're not doing anything with information. It doesn't do us a lot of good to go buy that house 400 times a day. It may slow it down, but we're trying to build something, and it takes time to build something. The result is good. It just takes time. What we have seen from the community in this room, I'm not sure if there's any landlords here or not, but the landlords have stepped up in the last 18 months to 2 years, and they've helped evict some of the problem people. That's huge. Hopefully they stay out of the area. I don't care where they go. Just get the hell out of here, right? So, but that's what it takes. It takes landlords stepping up. It takes landlords understanding the problem in their building and helping get them out, okay? And I realized during COVID the regulations were tough to get people out. Those have rescinded a bit, and it's helped. But that's what we need. We need a lot to get a warrant. We need a lot to get a conviction. As Bram will say down here, I mean, he thinks about cases at the beginning for conviction. He wants a conviction. We need a strong case, or it's not worth bringing it. You can only bring it once. So make sure you have it. That's probably one of the biggest things I've seen here is the landlords have stepped up. It's been great. This is the last part. Overall, what we're seeing is a convergence of a bunch of factors, but it's really the perfect storm. There's reduction in state funding that provide housing for many individuals during COVID that are now unhoused. That's unfortunate, and that's where we are. There's the easing of the COVID restrictions that brought a lot of stuff that was hidden behind closed doors. When COVID hit, we thought as a PD we were going to erupt with calls. Like we're nervous about people being home and all things. It didn't happen. Our calls went down. But when COVID reduced, or we can't say ended because people still haven't, reduced, our calls started to climb, and now they have skyrocketed. And that's just the way it is. I mean, we were lulled by COVID, and it's over. And then bail reform is huge. Bail reform came 2018. So bail reform in 2018 took the feet right out from under us. We can no longer lodge and hold people, and that's just the reality of it. So when I started 25 years ago, we used to sit around the troop room at the barracks and say, man, we can't lodge anybody. I'd go back to those days anytime, because we could, as it turns out, we could lodge everybody. That's no longer the way it is. I'm just going to end this with this. And by the way, we will get through this. I don't want to sound all gloom and doom. We're fine. We're going to be fine. The community's good here. Everybody in here is trying hard. We're going to be fine. It's going to take some work, but we're going to be good, all right? It's just going to take a little time. We'll be all right with this. Been doing this a long time. Things goes in ebb and flows, and we're going to be fine. But I just want to give you one thing, leave you with this. May like it, may not like it, but I think it needs to be said that there's often distorted and exaggerated perceptions that come out of a lot of this stuff when it starts coming out. We were partly to blame for that with some of the press releases we put out. And we don't put a lot out, as many of you know. We don't put a lot. I'm not here to shame people. I'm not here to put people down for making a mistake. But when somebody has a lot of involvements, we put press releases out because I want people to understand some of the restrictions we have in our job. But then it takes on a life of its own with his social media. So sometimes then things, I'm not saying often get exaggerated, but sometimes things do get exaggerated. And one thing happens in one part of the city, and now it seems to have happened everywhere. And just today, we had 3 calls that officers had to respond to. And just give you an example. We had a call of a lady passed out in the bushes. Our officers went. She wasn't passed out. She was just sitting there waiting for her child to come out. We had a call of an incapacitated male staggering down the street. An officer was literally right there, wasn't incapacitated or staggering down the street. So this is stuff, I mean, we'll respond to stuff, but people are a little hyper-vigilant right now. I'm not saying not to keep your property safe and your family safe and pay attention, but we need to take a breath a little bit. We're running around, and I have no problem with us running around doing our job. But some people are just trying to live, and they're unhoused, and we have to be careful of how much we push. If they're a problem, we'll push as hard as we can possibly push. But we just need to keep that in mind. And lastly, a couple things that came out of the clearing of the areas and stuff. There was no meth lab in there. That's been flying around. That's a big one we keep hearing. And also that all the car brakes, to my knowledge, I don't think we've had a single broken window in these car brakes. Lock your cars. I'll leave you with that. That's it.
Samantha?
Hi, my name is Samantha Weber, and I'm the Northwestern Counseling and Support Services Embedded Crisis Clinician at the St. Albans Police Department. Thank you for listening to me for a few minutes tonight. I'd like to start with a quick overview of our clinical unit. We now have 2 master's level clinicians embedded within the St. Albans Police Department, which gives the city 80 hours of clinical support weekly, timed to be available during the busiest hours. Besides de-escalation and problem solving provided in the moment on calls, this provides anyone in contact with law enforcement a direct conduit to services and supports after an incident. As clinicians, we try to be present on calls that have indicators that someone might benefit from some long-term supports or referrals. If we are not present on scene, but follow-up services might be helpful, the responding officers will ask the next clinician on duty to reach out to the person identified. We try to reach those in our community who are struggling in a way that they end up in contact with emergency services and connecting them then with whatever supports help them right their ship in that moment. Both of our clinicians are experts in emergency mental health. In any given day, we could assess and negotiate with a barricaded person with suicidal or homicidal ideation and then move on to a call on the side of the road where we're holding a baby because their family is too deep in crisis to be available. On more days than not, we talk to people who are unhoused or actively engaging in drug culture or facing some intolerable level of family distress. While we can't stop the bad days from happening, we hope to be there on the bad days to make them a little less bad and hopefully to avoid more bad days in the future. I've spoken with many officers about what they experience as the difference between responding solely as law enforcement versus with a clinical co-responder. I wanted to share with you a powerful response I received from one officer in the hope that it helps paint a more clear daily picture. He said, "It's like going to a hospital with a rare, mysterious presentation. The emergency room doctor sees it and is like, wow, very mysterious. I've never seen this before. And then more doctors gather thinking that they might be able to help even though they've never seen this before either. Eventually the patient gets in front of a specialist and the specialist says, I know what this is and I know how to treat it. And then all of the other doctors can disperse to go resume care for all of the other hospital patients, and the patient with this mystery gets the care that they need to. Having a clinician is like that for our mental health calls. We are all more confident officers in responding to mental health calls now because we know that when we don't have the right tool for the job on our duty belts, we've got the specialist and they have a whole different tool belt with all the special tools needed. And because we no longer get tied up for 6 hours at a time trying to do a job that we might not understand, We can go and take care of the problems we do know how to solve and the situations we do know how to help. And when we learn from the specialists, the next time we interact with mental illness, we know a little bit more about how we can help. We are all better because of this embedded program. And I hope that that conveys how much we're all working together to all of you to really take care of this community that's precious to all of us. I'd also like to talk a little bit about the treatment systems for substance use and mental health specifically, as it seems like this is a theme for many of the concerns that brought you here tonight. Mental health and substance use are complexly related. Mental health issues can lead to substance misuse, and substance misuse can contribute to mental illness, and both issues cause cognitive and behavioral and physiological symptoms. Accordingly, trying to separate the effects of the drugs when assessing mental illness is prohibitive. While we do utilize a co-occurring approach in treatment as much as possible, some level of sobriety typically does need to be achieved prior to us being able to do meaningful mental health work. While we can, and under certain circumstances we do, insist on involuntary mental health treatment, the systems in place cannot insist on involuntary substance use treatment. Those of us who assess for involuntary treatment also have to rule out substances prior to an involuntary commitment, so it becomes a complicating factor for us. The only place in Vermont right now where people are receiving involuntary sobriety is realistically in jail. If someone is remanded to jail, they are assigned to a caseworker, and if there are voluntary substance use or mental health treatment that they want to engage with when they are discharged from jail, the caseworker can help coordinate that for their release. On many levels, this is a pathway towards success if the individual chooses it at that point. Short of the incarceration pathway, the next best intervention is to show up every time we get a call and suggest to the individual every time that maybe today is the day that they could start down their path towards sobriety. And if they decide today is that day, they don't have to do it alone. No one says yes the first time I offer them drug treatment. So when I respond with officers, I hear a lot of no, I don't want help, but I want to be there the first time they're willing to say yes, and for them to know that they aren't going to do it alone and that we can pull barriers away from the things that are keeping them from being healthy and safe. The question then comes up, should the judge mandate mental health or substance use treatment? Well, this is within the purview of the courts to do sometimes. Research has shown mandated treatment has an unfavorable impact on the outcomes of treatment. Locally, our mental health providers have a wait list of people who are anxiously awaiting an opportunity to receive the treatment that they want. By adding individuals who are mandated into treatment, it delays services even further to those of you who are wanting the help, while not actually having a significant pro-social impact on those mandated to treatment. Besides being unhelpful therapeutically, should the mandated individuals choose to not engage in services, there's very little in place in the system that puts them back in front of a judge. Those cases are typically already resolved at that point. Our community is perpetually evolving, as are the issues that the community faces. However, systemic change is slow, systems are taxed, and that is why having representatives that truly do speak for the voice of the majority is vital. Our county and state representatives need to know how to move the system towards the things that are important to their constituents. Please educate yourselves and your neighbors about who is speaking for you and how to reach them with your ideas and values. I've thought a lot in the last week about what I think the ask is for this meeting tonight. I think people are worried and they're trying to know how they can be part of protecting this community that they live in, and I think that's amazing. I ask that each of you keep looking for ways to help and keep using your voices in productive ways to be heard at levels that affect real change. Keep insisting that we be our best selves and our safest selves and our most compassionate selves. I defer to law enforcement and city leadership always to give you practical guidance, but what I can give you is reassurance that those of us responding to this community every day haven't given up. We share your values and beliefs, and we do our best every day to tackle urban problems at appropriate pressure points to cause the positive ripple effect that we all want to see. So what can you do? I can tell you to keep your hearts open and your doors locked and productive conversation flowing. If something makes you feel uncomfortable, you can always call for emergency services, whether that is 911 or NCSS crisis team if you'd like to run something by them first. We're all here 24/7 for you.
Mike.
Thanks, Emerson. It's nice to have Emerson back in town. So I'm Mike McCarthy. I represent the city of St. Albans in the legislature along with Representative Toof. And I primarily wanted to come here to listen to what folks have to say. But what I want to share with you is that legislators, specifically my counterpart, the chair of House Judiciary, Representative Lalonde, and I chair the House Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee that works with law enforcement leaders on training and how we administer law enforcement across the state. And so Representative Lalonde and I spent a lot of time talking to business leaders and law enforcement leaders over the last year. And we co-sponsored a number of bills, and his committee put forth a number of bills that we passed on a tripartisan basis to really try to address some of the specific things that I think you heard the chief discuss and some of the things that I think you'll hear our state's attorney discuss. We recognize that coming out of the pandemic, that these retail thefts primarily related to people who are trying to seek the funds that they need to satisfy the needs that they have when they're struggling with addiction, that there needs to be a higher degree of accountability for that. I think for a long time, it shouldn't be that complicated, right? But some of these things are obvious. I think for a long time, many of us legislators, you know, the bail reform that Chief Lamothe talked about that happened in 2018, I'll say I wasn't in the legislature at the time, but that was a widely accepted bill. It was signed by Governor Scott, and it capped bail at $200 and really limited some of the tools that folks like our state's attorneys across the state and judges have in order to help people stay lodged pending the outcome of their cases. So that's really connected to the fact that we have this huge court backlog, and we know two things help deal with some of these public safety issues. Deterring crime, you need to have a reasonable expectation that people are going to get caught. So if you have a fear that you're going to get caught, and then number two, that the consequences, the resolution of your case is going to happen swiftly, those are the things that deter crime. Our court system being underfunded and overwhelmed for years has been a key part of this problem, and it's one that the budget that's going to go into effect July 1st hopes to start to address. It does that in a couple of ways. We've done an historic investment in the courts to help them deal with the backlog in terms of staff and to help support our prosecutors and our judges. We've added judges and prosecutors, those positions across the state to help deal with these cases and resolve them more quickly. So budget and resources is one of the key ways that the legislature helps to deal with some of these issues. The other pieces of legislation that are specifically designed to deal with some of this, some of them have already just become law. So the first one I'll mention that deals with going back a little bit on some of those bail reform measures from 2018 is S-195, which just became law at the end of May. And literally within 48 hours, one of the people that had committed, just serial thefts and other offenses, the state's attorney was able to ask for a higher amount of bail and to have that person lodged. So we are starting to see some of the efforts that we've made over the last few months in the legislature actually have an impact here in our community. So that's S-195. Couple of things related to the specific types of crimes and the ability that we have to hold people accountable for them. One is H-534. One of the things that the chief talked about was that those misdemeanors aren't something that we can hold people for, right? And what we were seeing people do is have a series of retail thefts. I can see some store owners here tonight who've experienced this where, people stay just under that limit where it's a felony and they know that they won't have as serious of a charge. Well, now if you do this inside of a 14-day window, multiple small thefts will add up to a potential felony charge, and that's another tool that our state's attorneys and our court system will have in order to advance these cases and take them more seriously. Another bill that we passed will actually very specifically make trespassing in someone's car a crime. You wouldn't believe this, but up until very recently with the governor signing this bill, it actually wasn't specifically a crime to go into somebody's unlocked car without permission. I mean, it's Vermont. We trust each other. I love Vermont. I love our communities. I love how trusting we are. We needed to update the law to make that something that was punishable, and that's something that we did. There's a number of other bills that we passed. I won't go through them all, but one that I think is really important is S58. And this is a law that's going to make it more possible for us to take seriously and prosecute the kind of drug trafficking that we're seeing. We're also seeing some delays in some of the criminal justice reform effort around raise the age, and that's extremely controversial. I think in Vermont, we all believe people deserve a second chance, but we also have to dial in the level of accountability we need to address the specific crimes that we're seeing right now. And that's another set of tools that folks like our state's attorney are going to have in order to take these more seriously. But what I want to close with, to some of the points that our mental health professional here made, is that the legislature has been stuck for years in a debate about inpatient versus community-based mental health services and where we should put the limited resources we have. And I think that there's a growing sense that I've heard from community members that I talked to before this started tonight, that we need to invest in more inpatient beds. I'm hearing that from our hospital leadership here, and we are doing that, and it's taking too long, and I want to acknowledge that. At the same time, I want to lift up and value the dignity of every single person, even people who are struggling, people who've made mistakes. I know people in this room tonight that were in the throes of terrible addiction, people in my family who had committed crimes and hurt people in our community because of their substance use. And a lot of those people recover, and they become productive people in our society. I know people in this room tonight who are really struggling in their addiction and in their recovery have saved so many people's lives in our community. And so I don't want to lose sight of the humanity and the dignity of every single person. The very last thing I want to mention is about housing. The administration and the Senate went to bat with the House, and the House lost around how much money we were going to put into extending some of the pandemic era GA housing. So we've put some really more strict limits on who will get access to some of the emergency housing money. And over the last couple of months, and this will continue to happen, there are a number of people who are housed in hotels and motels that now have nowhere to go. There are an increasing number of those people in our community and in other communities across the state. And there are consequences and costs to not funding those beds for people. And I think we're seeing some of the results of that now. I know that we as a state can't afford to shelter everybody all the time, but I think that because we have a housing market that we're just beginning to change regulations and invest in more units and try to bring costs down and work with partners like CVOEO and the Champlain Housing Trust, and we've got developers in this room who are trying to create housing. We've had an incredible effort from our city manager and the city council for a decade on housing and shelter here in the city. It's going to take years. And what do we do with the people who are in our community who are unsheltered and commit crimes out of desperation if they don't have a place to go and they also are struggling with mental health or substance use issues? So we don't have all the answers. We've made a lot of progress, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your stories and what your suggestions are for us moving forward. So thank you.
Bram, why don't you go? Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bram Kronigfeld. I'm the Franklin County State's Attorney. I guess I got appointed last Labor Day, so I've been doing this for a little under a year now. I've been a lawyer for about 20 years. I've been a prosecutor in Vermont for about 17 years, on and off. I just want to say I'm honored to be here on this panel. Thank you for inviting me. And I think this is a conversation that's long overdue, and I'm really looking forward to having this, and I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you and hearing what we can do better and what we might want to start thinking about. I'm just going to limit my comments to sort of what issues we're dealing with, and with a focus on maybe the particular issues that we deal with at the State's Attorney's Office. I mean, the big picture here is that we're in the midst of a national fentanyl crisis. This is nationwide. The problems and the challenges we're experiencing here in this community are challenges that are being felt across the country right now. And I checked the FBI data this morning on crime rates, and guess what? We're not imagining this. Crime is up, particularly violent crime in Vermont. I think that the fentanyl crisis is sort of driving crime on both ends of the spectrum. On one end, we're seeing a lot more drug dealers, particularly from New York City and from Springfield, Mass, coming up here and setting up shop in Vermont. And I think that's one of the main reasons that Vermont has experienced apparently 165% increase in homicides since 2012, or at least I think that's a big reason why it's driving it. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I think you're seeing exactly the kinds of crimes that have brought us all here together tonight. You know, things like crimes that we used to refer to as nuisance crimes, although at this point I think that's not the right word for what's going on. You know, the retail thefts, the unlawful trespasses, the disorderly conducts. This is all increasing. And I mean, I can tell you from experience that these are crimes that are driven largely by untreated mental illness and or untreated addiction. And you know, we're talking about people who have no resources. We're talking about people who are desperate, and they have now, after probably years of struggling on their own, have gotten to a place where they're now committing crimes. It's not to say I think that they shouldn't be held accountable if they break the law. I think one of the big challenges we deal with is that we've got an under-resourced system across the board. I mean, I think we've all, you know, the other panelists have mentioned this, but I mean, the prosecutors in this state are heavily understaffed. The courts are understaffed. I know the police are understaffed. And actually, in preparing for tonight, I discovered that our treatment providers are actually decreasing in Vermont over the last few years. So we're actually not even resourcing the kinds of treatment providers that would be able to help address this problem. And I think as both Chief Lamoth and Representative McCarthy just mentioned, you know, the law in Vermont around criminal justice can be challenging. And I want to applaud Representative McCarthy and all of our other legislators for their efforts this year to address some of the problems in the criminal law, because I can tell you it's already made a difference. I mean, there were some major changes that just got signed into law, particularly around the bail statute. And I say with pride that the day after the governor signed one of the exceptions to the $200 cap in the bail statute, we successfully had bail set on a serial offender here in St. Albans. And you know, I can tell you, eventually she was bailed out by the Vermont Freedom Fund. But within 12 hours, she had committed another crime, and we once again asked for bail, and she was held on bail the second time around. 3 weeks ago, we wouldn't have been able to do that because the cap would have been in place. I think there's a lot more we could do. I've got, you know, my own personal list of things I think we could improve, but I'll save that for the conversation. And I just want to say this. I mean, I think that often this conversation gets framed around the idea that either we can hold people accountable for breaking the law, or we can provide them with treatment. And I want to ask the question tonight, why can't we do both? You know, I mean, I firmly believe that we should take care of each other, and I think that you know, takes the form of you know, addressing homelessness and providing people with treatment, both for mental illness and for substance abuse. But I also firmly believe that we should be able to hold each other accountable for our behavior. And so, And so I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I think, you know, if we're going to have this conversation at all, I think we've got to make it a holistic one, and we shouldn't just be talking about one or the other. We should be talking about the whole picture. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Greg Rainville. I grew up on a dairy farm up in Franklin, up on the Canadian border. Both of my grandfathers had farms that when they opened the barn door at night, the cows walked into Canada to graze. I barely graduated from high school because I was in a dairy barn milking cows, where I was on a tractor seat most of my life. And then I watched Perry Mason and decided I wanted to become a lawyer. Didn't impress my dad a bit. What happened subsequently is I did go to law school, came back to Franklin County, practiced law for 18 years, did some criminal work, worked in a state's attorney's office as an intern for a period of time, and then went into civil practice. So I didn't have a lot of exposure to criminal law from about 1980 until I went on the bench in 2006. I did a lot of litigation. I worked in a lot of people's kitchens, working with people. That's what I enjoyed doing, was working with people. I like people. Good people, bad people. We all do good things. We all do bad things. And that's just life. So what I don't like is injustice. And that was one of the things that pushed me into becoming a judge. I had no intentions. Sat as a sitting judge in small claims court one time, did it again, decided maybe that was something I could do. I sat on the environmental board for a few years as an alternate, really enjoyed adjudicating claims and resolving conflict. All right, so I went on the bench in 2006. In Vermont, you're a multi-jurisdictional judge, which means you do everything. So you might do a divorce, you might be in divorce court for a year, or you might do a divorce in the morning, criminal case in the afternoon, a juvenile case later. Depends what jurisdiction you're in. When I first went on the bench, I thought that some of the punishments were really harsh. I was seeing people with drug offenses that were being sentenced for long periods of time. Seeing the whole philosophy in the court system at that time, I thought, was more on the harsh side than it was the leniency side. And we weren't spending much money working with people to do drug rehabilitation or preventative measures for mental health either. As the years went by, that pendulum has swung. Now, I have another philosophy, and there are many people here who are younger than I am. I just turned 70. So I was in high school and college when our president and his brother and Martin Luther King and several others were gunned down in the streets. Families are being torn apart because of the Vietnam War. Enormous conflict in communities and in families. Times were rough. Nobody believed that we were safe. Nobody believed that we were in a stable economy, a stable political system. It was terrible. We got through it. As bad as things sometimes appear today with our political climate, and with our economic climate, although that's changed dramatically, with our legal system and with our crime rate, this is nowhere near as bad as what I recall in the late 60s and early 70s. So keeping things in perspective is important. I remind myself that when I bought my parents' dairy farm in 1981, I was paying 12% interest. Interest rates went down for homes below 3%. I got in at one at 2.7. Now I hear people freaking out when they hear 6% interest rates. In my mind, if you use perspective, 6% is pretty damn good. It's a hell of a change from 3% that people 30 years of age and younger have experienced. I bring that up because, again, this is all about perspective, folks. We have to keep this in perspective, and I don't want to run too long. You folks have a lot you need to say, and we'd like to hear it. There's something else I need to point out, and somebody here mentioned a perfect storm, and that's what we ran into here. The court system was laboring hard, way backlogged. We didn't have enough judges. We didn't have enough staff. You hear this all the time, and you must get sick of hearing it, and I don't blame you. The problem is it's the truth. We had 35, 37 judges in this state. And I rarely took a day off. If I was sick, I went to work. If I didn't go to work, my whole docket got canceled. There were people who needed divorces, people who needed juvenile hearings because of matters that were happening. There were people who'd been waiting for a trial, either civil or criminal, and they needed a judge there. We went to work. And then COVID hit, and it just tripled everything. It made things extremely difficult. And then we put in a new computer software system, Odyssey. I'm not going to rant and rave about Odyssey. It's got its good points. It won't take long to describe them. But they're there. It's brought about some good things. But it slowed us down dramatically. So here you have an overworked system, gets hit by COVID. People aren't coming to court. We shut down the system basically. At first we thought you should wipe down all the tables and everything you touch, and then we find out it's not touching things, it's the air we breathe. Guess what? All these old court systems had really poor air handling systems. Some had no air handling systems. We just got an air conditioning unit up here in civil court. When was it, Kelly? 5 years ago? 6 years ago? 2 years ago. I remember sitting in that courthouse when it was 90 degrees trying to do a trial. The mini splits. But it wasn't very long ago. Yeah, okay. Time goes by. All right. So we couldn't conduct trials. We couldn't even bring a gathering of people in a courtroom because of the air quality. Up in Canada, they have air exchangers. They clean the air. United States, we don't pay attention to that. So we had to shut everything down for a long time. We couldn't expose people to the risk. On top of that, we're straining to learn this new software problem, software implementation. Now people have pretty much got it under control. People are learning from it. They're improving it. But it was a very difficult process. So what have you got? In 2020, in March of 2020, we shut down the court system basically for about a year. All we did was emergency stuff. 6 months later, we're trying to start up trials again, and then we have an upsurge in COVID. And it was cyclical. It'd get better, it'd get worse. Get better, it'd get worse. We couldn't even bring people into the courthouse. Everybody in the community started getting used to a non-functioning court system. Finally, in about 2021, things settled down a little bit. We brought in a lot of new air handling systems in some of the courthouses. We started having hearings, and we started pushing for people to attend hearings. One of the great things that came out about this is we got remote processes in place so that people could attend remotely. They could be sitting in their kitchen and still participate in a hearing. There's goods and bad to that. But the upside of that, it really helped us at a time when we couldn't have gatherings in the courtroom. And now we have the advantage. If you need an expert witness from out of state, you don't have to pay them 2 days of travel to come here. They can participate remotely. Other things, and when I say the pendulum is swung, what I'm saying is we now have some improved statutes. We've already talked about them. That's going to tighten things up a bit. The decriminalization that took place in 2018, 2020 couldn't have been worse timed. Nobody knew COVID was going to hit. But when you add to the decriminalization the fact you can't even hold hearings, all of a sudden your system breaks down. It takes time to get that back into effect. It is coming back. The pendulum is swinging. People are back in court. More and more judges are holding people accountable. The bail statutes have been interpreted a little bit differently than they were initially. Initially, misdemeanor $200 was the most you could set for bail. I was one of the judges who didn't like that, and I interpreted it to mean per charge. So if you had 5 charges, it wasn't $200 bail, if bail was justified. There are many cases where it's not justified. It's not punishment. And there was a Supreme Court decision that came about just before I retired that said that that was a correct interpretation of the statute. So you can set bail $200 per charge, which in some cases is absolutely necessary when people rack up 10 cases, 12 cases, 15 cases in a year's period. There are professional thieves out there. Many people have turned this into a business. That's what became, when I say there's a perfect storm, that's part of what resulted from COVID and shutting down the court system. I remember going to Newport. I was assigned up there for 21 through early 22, September to September of 21 and 22. We were so short of staff. People were under such stress. People were quitting. People were retiring. We lost 60% of our judges in 5 years. The average judge today has 5 years or less experience. All the old-time judges like me, you get burned out after a while. You get tired. And the last 3 or 4 years just took it right out of you. And so people just retired. Many people didn't even wait to get the 12-year retirement stage. They put in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years as judges and left. So every time a judge leaves, it takes time to hire a new judge, and it takes a lot of time to get that judge trained and experienced. So the system has been working with both hands tied behind its back. Okay, folks? Don't give up on this. It has changed. We now have 3 more judges coming on board. Thank goodness the legislature pushed that, helped us out a bit. We still need a bunch more staff. We still need to improve the Odyssey program, but it's better than it was 3 years ago. We're moving many more cases than we were 2 and 3 years ago. We have a long way to go. It's going to take 10 years to write this. It will. And if we can do this in 10 years, we're going to do well. But there's some benefits that have come out about this. And when I look around, St. Albans is a pretty safe place. Franklin County is a great place to live. I love Franklin County. So don't give up on this. Things are going in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, so now what we'd like to do is open it up to the public, and what we need people to do is just to line up, and you can start wherever you would like. Just come forward, please say your name, where you live, and go from there.
My name is J. Michael Bushy, and I'm St. Albans all my life. And I'll keep it very short with regards to for the chief. I know that we have the city and the town and Highgate. The question I have, you only have so much manpower. Is it a possibility that you could have auxiliary police?
So there aren't auxiliary police. There aren't auxiliary police. There's 2 levels of police officers. There's level 2 and level 3. Their level 2 is very restricted on what they can enforce for laws. They can't enforce felony convictions.
Right.
So we, in our department, are only using level 3 officers. That's why we're going to continue operating. Mm-hmm. That being said, we won't have St. Albans City, Town, and Highgate at the same time. We don't get the town of St. Albans till July 1st. When that occurs, we lose the Highgate contract or drop the Highgate contract. Mm-hmm. And as far as staffing goes, just for everybody in here, we're poised to be in good shape for the July 1st contract takeover. I could use 3 times the people we have now, but we'll be in good shape to do it. But we won't have that. And as far as auxiliary, we want level 3 fully certified officers. The only time we'll use a level 2 is while we're waiting for a next level 3 class to come.
Okay. The other thing too is, be nice to have like a neighborhood watch.
That's up to the neighbor. That's something that the neighbors and the citizens operate. That's nothing the police department operates. That's something we can liaison, but that's nothing that's operated through the police department.
Okay. The other thing too is that, be nice, I know you guys have unmarked cars and so on. If we could get people, I wouldn't mind, I'd volunteer to drive one of those cars around to patrol around in the city. And of course, if you see something, you got the radio in the car to call the cruiser.
That creates a whole different set of problems. I appreciate your offer and your help.
Yeah.
That's where a neighborhood watch would come in.
Okay.
Is people
Okay.
say something, see something, say something.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, I'm all set, and again, I want to congratulate the city down by the laundromat out back of cleaning all the woods out. They've done a terrific job cleaning that out down there.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Coulomb. I live in the city. I bought a house here in 2022. I'm a native Vermonter, and I grew up in Essex, but I moved to St. Albans because I just adored the city. Decided to raise my kids here. I live on Diamond Street, right next to the place that was subject to the raid-style warrant, search, and arrest. That happened twice. I also work here. I work in my home office. What has made me feel very concerned is, and I know that a lot of the hands are tied, two hands tied behind our backs, is that this individual has been out and able to continue to deal drugs and do his illicit activities all while on bail in that house. And my question is, are we going to start holding landlords and homeowners responsible? Because that person who owns that property is responsible for that activity. And I think that if we start holding, there are laws on the books that deter and prohibit landlords and property owners from using their properties in such ways. And if we start enforcing those laws, that's a very strong deterrent, and it sends a very strong message to other property owners that they need to clean up their act, that they cannot allow this. And in particular, that situation is bad. I've got kids there. I had kids there Thursday night and Friday morning. That was very terrifying. Thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
I'd like to touch on that briefly. Alderman Hawkins, Tim Hawkins, and the council's all on board with this as well. But we're working through the logistics now. Councilman Hawkins brought it to the council to talk about landlord responsibilities. And if they fail to rent to individuals, or there's police calls to that site on a countless basis, then landlords will be either fined or penalized in some form or fashion. The discussion is very, very premature, but there is a subcommittee with the council focused on just exactly what that individual shared with you. So we're going to move the conversation forward. We're going to call on landlords to be more responsible as to who they rent to and how the property is maintained, and hopefully reduce the number of police activity in those homes moving forward. So you should hear more about that as we progress.
Thanks, John.
Hi, my name is John Bakari. I moved here to St. Albans about 2 years ago. I'm a veteran. I am a retired police officer from Shreveport, Louisiana, with 20 years of experience. I worked in corrections also in my 20 years of law enforcement. I have seen a city deteriorate in Shreveport, where I moved from. It started with lack of accountability. I've heard some things tonight about being humane and people struggling with addiction and mental health. I can only speak for myself and my experience, but I would like to say that I've spoken to numerous inmates over my time as a police officer, numerous families in need of service, programs that were set up. Some were successful, a lot weren't. I've spoken, like I said, to numerous inmates who've told me flat out they needed a rest from the street. And this is also a way that people get clean. This is also a way that people recover. Accountability needs to be the priority. I'm Team Blue. I've done it. I know what it's like to police with my hands tied behind my back, like we've been saying. I heard the judge earlier. Judge, thank you for your service. I've heard the judge talk about, the way things were in the past, and they weren't, they aren't as bad now. I was young during that time frame, but we don't want them to get back to that. So it's time I believe it's time for us to make sure we're watching who we vote for, watching our judges, making sure, Chief, what is your relationship with the district attorney's office here? Do you consider it good? How successful are you with Terry stops in St. Albans? Do you usually get some good arrests from that?
Interdiction is tough in Vermont. The regulations have made it harder and harder and harder over the years.
Okay. Okay, well, that's all I wanted to say. I really love St. Albans. I want it to stay safe, and I thought I should put my 2 cents in. And I think it's time, before things get worse, that we really buckle down and try and get some things done here, because it'll just get worse.
I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
service, and if you want an application, come see us.
Thank you for your thoughts.
Hello, I'm Annabelle. Wait. Okay, let me try that again. Hello, I'm Annabelle. I moved here fleeing violence in November of last year. Actually, it probably ain't safe for me to be on camera. But the problem is I keep hearing you guys talk about addiction, crime. Haven't we been through this before, the cycle over and over again, and keep getting back to the same place we are now? What the problem is you put people in desperate situations, they're going to do desperate things. The judge over here talks about injustice. The GA housing program was set up for injustice. People are discriminated against, people are kicked out. I'm a client of Voices Against Violence. There's a point where their hands are tied because there's no oversight in programs. Any of us could be a victim of a violent crime and go to get help, or a victim of domestic violence or sex trafficking or anything, and going to get help and end up getting discriminated against, or the Cadillac Motel, and I'm going to say this, Cadillac Motel, whose manager tried to get my pastor, the head of Voices, arrested for advocating for me because they were lying, and the head of that motel, the person who runs that motel, is a drug addict. My point being is we all look at one side of the issue, we don't look at the other side of the issue, but it's not just one or the other. It's a community issue. Why don't we get back to, no offense, Mike, why don't we get back to working together as a community and solving problems as a community? I understand what you guys are talking about, but you're looking at one-sided issues. You're not looking at the whole picture. I remember years ago It felt like when you lived in a community, it was what was that old saying? It took a community to raise a child. It took a community working together to fix stuff. In the past 25 years, we're pushing away, we're pulling away from each other, and COVID was an aggravated situation in it. We're a community. I actually wrote a proposal, gave it to Mike, gave it to her, gave it to my pastors. Anybody can get it. You can ask Mike, get an email. It's a proposal of a community roots. It's getting back to community.
Hi, my name is Celia Hill. I've been in the city of St. Albans for about 5-6 years. I've done 3 different individual things. It's not all on one, same topic. I'm going to take one and go down. There's 3 of them. Okay, one was not too long ago, I went into the Family Dollar store, and I was heading to my car, and I sat there for a few minutes before I started my car, and I actually saw this woman go up to, you know how they have the clothes rack outside the Family Dollar store? This woman didn't expect me, but I was watching her, and she lifted the articles without paying for it, stuck it down her shirt, walked to her car, and drove off. Now, I was an honest Samaritan, took the license plate, went back in the Family Dollar store and talked to the boss of the cash register. She wrote the license plate number down. So I figured I was an honest Samaritan. Everybody here in this city, we're in between poverty, rich, whatever. We don't have that kind of money to see people go into these stores and just go out of the store. That is not normal. That is not right. That's my opinion. I'm on a fixed income, and I don't believe any of that. That's the way I look at it. And the other one was, it happened in my car. I was dealing with the St. Albans PD, the police, still involved, still active case. This goes way back to December. I took and photocopied everything. Somebody cashed a money order at People's Trust Bank, and now it's just waiting to go through the court system. I'm waiting. That goes way back in December of this year. Patience of virtue, things come in good time. Hope we can get it solved, because that person should not have got away with it. I am disabled, and you don't steal things out of my car. No, I don't believe in that. That's my point. Yes.
Hi, my name is Laura Isham. I just wanted to touch on a couple points. Mo Lamoth, Chief Lamoth, is also it's sort of tangential to what he was saying, but basically we are getting some increase in property crimes, but we don't want to overreact. And like I was seeing an article in the Messenger, some of the downtown business owners being a little worried about people sort of working each other up and people being afraid to go downtown. And definitely I'm hoping that we're not going to see a lot of that, because I think that we can be cautious, have common sense, but not overreact and panic. And the more people that are around, able to witness anything that does happen, it's going to deter people from doing those kinds of crimes. So I'm hoping that people won't be too afraid to and start avoiding downtown and make the problem worse and get into a vicious cycle. So I'm hoping that everyone can strike a good balance on that. I also want to thank Mike McCarthy for bringing up the court backlog, and many others have touched on it since he brought it up. But I think that's going to be really key, is to not have this huge backlog and get things through the court system. I think that'll be a big help for the problem. And just one more thing, like we do want to have both accountability and helping people as well. Like most of the people who are at sort of there's sort of the pyramid of like the people who have demand for drugs and then the people who are selling the drugs. The people at the base of the pyramid are the ones that it's going to be the most effective to deal with that problem and reduce the demand for drugs. And I think that's where we want to definitely focus our efforts. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gene Kegler. I live over on Kingman Street. I used to have a house up on Ferris Street. It was the old Manahan house, actually. Some of you may know it. I sold that house, and I moved to Kingman Street. And when we moved into the house in 2003, I left a place that's like this now. It's New Jersey. I used to work in the city. Doctors told me by the time I was 55, I was going to be dead. Well, at 55, I moved to Vermont. Okay. You know, you got to listen to the doctors, right? So I moved to Vermont. Beautiful place. Burlington, one of the top 10 cities in the United States to live in. I was proud to move here. Our pilots were down at 911 before anybody. We were the first ones there. I was proud of that. But what happened? My daughter at 8 years old, she couldn't stand to ride on the school bus, so she could drive to work, back and forth. What happened since then? What happened since then? And I'm tired of hearing COVID as an excuse, because COVID was just a few years. And now it's going to take 10 years to fix it? What's the problem is the legislatures are for the criminals and for the people that aren't paying the taxes. We are the highest tax state in this country per income. Do you know that? Are you happy about that? Please, raise your hands if you're happy about that. Please, raise your hands, because I am not. I'm a senior citizen. I still have to work. My taxes, my Social Security is taxed. One of the few states that taxes Social Security. Now, okay, fine. And I hear, oh, you get so much for your taxes. What do we get for our taxes? What? Yeah, exactly. Wait till the 1st. Wait till the 1st of July. How much more we're going to get. Where is that money going? It's not going to help us. It's not going to help the people that are having problems, that are causing the problems. Where is this money? The money is not going into the right places. The money should be going to protect us. Why are the police defunded? The police are defunded. They can't do their jobs. They're strapped with laws that let these people go. Is this what we want? It's the legislature's fault. Change the laws. And if they don't change the laws, change the legislatures. I'm getting very emotional. I'm getting very upset right now, so I'm just going to leave it at that. But when I go to work in the morning, I walk 2 blocks. I am afraid. I'm 70 years old. A punch from a 20-year-old is a lethal weapon to me, but yet I can't use lethal force against them. I have to punch them and get the hell kicked out of me, or I'd have to be dead before I'm allowed to defend myself according to the law. I have women who come in at 10 o'clock in the morning who are afraid. Our back door of Nemo's is right by the courthouse. And the drugs that go on, the people that are there, is just crazy. And Mike, that was your backyard too. And that's the people that are in your restaurant too, that you used to have. And they're afraid. They're afraid to close at night. We're closing an hour earlier because they're afraid, because one time, Mimo's daughter, she was closing the register. They tried to get in the front door. She ran and locked it, and then they ran down the side door. She was lucky she got there in time because they were just coming in. And these are women and young defenseless boys who, they got to leave at 9 o'clock. What's going to happen in the winter? Put the money where it belongs. The money belongs to the police. It belongs to protect us. It belongs to help those people who need help. Thank you.
My name is David McWilliams. I've been a long time resident of the city and the town, and I think we have a beautiful city and town that works together. In the last 2 months, I've had 2 different people come panhandling. One wanted money from me. One on Kingman Street, then one up in the shopping center up here near Walgreens. And then I called the police officer one day because I let a woman inside the church, St. Paul's, to take and use the bathroom and get water. Well, anyways, I let her in. She got up top of the stairs and started swearing at me. And she was on drugs real bad. And anyways, I called the city police department. The city officer came up and he asked me what was going on. I said I let her in to use the restroom and get a glass of water. And so he told this girl, he said, you got to move, David wants you out of here. Well, anyways, that woman turned around and hit that officer right between the eyes. You'll see on the docket that it did happen, and that officer didn't do any heavy force until after he got hit right between the eyes and broke his glasses. But also, there's people living on the backside of St. Paul's Church. They leave a lot of garbage and they did vandalism. The church has also been broken into. There's over $2,000 worth of damage that was done, and the city police department came up and investigated it. Also, there's another church on Church Street. Someone took a paint can and sprayed the front doors of it. That's a lot of vandalism. The city of St. Albans Police Department, they're all good officers. Do we have enough? Can we afford more? The problem is that the taxpayers, if you want your money to go for law enforcement than anything else, you're going to have to speak to your council members and make them do something about giving more money for law enforcement. In St. Albans town, starting on July 1st, the town of St. Albans is going to be covered by the city police department. Are we going to have enough officers? You just got 2 that came out of the academy. How many full-time officers do you have right now?
When these 2, we had 1 come out of the academy. We hope to have 2 going in the August academy, but discounting those, we'll have 14 on the road, not counting the admin staff or the detectives or street crimes.
But, with the coverage that the town of St. Albans is paying $1.5 million for, are you going to have the manpower to take and cover it?
Yes, we'll have the manpower to cover it.
24/7?
24/7.
Thank you very much.
We're still growing, but yes.
My name is Donna George, and I have a comment and a question. I was glad to hear you speak, Mr. McCarthy, about the items that the legislature has passed, which is going to be helpful in consequences and hopefully getting some of these people off the streets. I had not heard about any of that in any of the discussions that I've heard on the television about what you guys have been working on, what has been passed. And my other question is, where does the governor fit in all this? Because I don't hear him talk about the crime in Vermont either. And I think he should be at least talking about it, if not involved in what's going on in this state, because supposedly this is his state and he's the head boss. So where is he?
So I don't want to turn this into a political speech, but I do want to address your question. So the governor addressed public safety in his first address to the legislature and said it was a priority. And in a lot of ways, my committee worked with the department, his commissioner, and I, Jen Morrison, have a great relationship. We're doing great progress on trying to make it easier to get more recruits into law enforcement and modernize the training. I've worked with the governor on a lot of things, but This year, he proposed a budget that would have forced us to cut deputy state's attorneys in offices like State's Attorney Kronichfeld.
I believe it.
And the legislature, I worked with Representative Lalonde, and our other legislature said, okay, we've got to actually add positions, we've got to reprioritize, because we were hearing from our constituents that this is a priority. And I think that, Gene spoke before, some of the money is going in the wrong place, or was. And I think that we need to constantly be moving forward with what we invest in. And I think these conversations about where those investments get made, whether it's upstream, where we're trying to make sure that we're preventing crime and public safety issues, or it's downstream where we need to hold people accountable, it's got to be a yes and. We have to do both. So.
Hi, my name is Melinda White. First, I want to say thank you, Emerson, for facilitating and all the panel members that you said. I love how things were ended on a positive note by each person. I'm not going to talk about the problems. I feel like when you look at a problem, it gets bigger, and if you look at the solution, it gets bigger. So first, and also any employers I have, boards I serve on, anything I say is as a civilian, a member of St. Albans, so it's my own opinion. I am a person who was a drug addict in recovery. I've been in this area. The only time I lived outside of Vermont was when I was in a residential treatment program for almost a year and a half in Philly. And when I first was seeking recovery, we had Maple Leaf Farm. We had Brattleboro Retreat, who did both substance use and mental health. Now it's only mental health. We have been continuing to lose a number of treatment beds, and that's now, and even like the PIP, right, the Public Inebriate Program, Act 1. Detox bridge. So we have lost so many resources in the substance use world. I'm grateful I got in recovery when I did. I also know that I have helped people that have told me medication has saved their life. Other people, medication has destroyed their life. I've talked to people that going to jail destroyed their life, and I'm married to a person who going to jail saved his life. So unfortunately, there's no cookie cutter response, right? It's case by case. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't even have to be here. Brad and I, a few years ago, were really uncomfortable with the fact that all the focus, I love the person that said it was all COVID, it's a copy. There was so much focus on COVID, and yes, that's a real thing, right? The rest of the stories, we lost sight at the losses and the deaths that were happening with substance use that were at one point almost the same rate as COVID. So we put together this substance use summit, and when you look at the key summit goals, increasing residential and recovery beds, extending residential stays. I hear a lot, 2 weeks, what is that going to do? Well, it's better than using for 2 weeks, and also it's not enough, right? So there needs to be longer programs. There needs to be like aftercare planning with bridges, not sending somebody back to the atmosphere until they get in a residential bed or they find a new place to go. A tri-state model. Medicaid is not paying enough, period. We are in a state where Medicaid will cover 14 days, and then our Valley Vista and Serenity House. So if you want to know the treatment providers, the residential treatment programs, that's it. They're easy to remember. We have 2. Medicaid pays 14 days. Some people can stay longer, but it's on the residential treatment provider's dime. They are doing all they can to stay afloat and stay funded. That's why when I hear new initiatives about, regardless of what they are, whether it's a harm reduction or it's a different, I'm against any of those, and it has nothing to do about the models. It has to do with the fact that we are not funding what already works. And if somebody goes through these other avenues and decides they want to get off drugs, where are they going to go? We're providing plenty of support for people to get on medications and drugs. We're not providing enough for people to get off and heal. So I do agree with people. We got to talk to our legislators, and we also don't want it to swing too much, right? It's got to be, the pendulum's got to be in the middle. For me, accountability. And I got a quick story. I'll make it really quick. I can talk fast, as fast as Mo, he knows that. Many moons ago, before I spent all my money on drugs, I paid somebody to plant a garden and flowers. To this day, I don't even really remember what they planted because I forgot to water, I didn't weed, I didn't do anything to take care of it. Now, in my life, I've been working in a garden. I've been on my hands and knees, getting my hands dirty, scraping my knees, destroying my hand. And why do I love them so much? And I know every flower where it is because I did the work. We have to have people do the work. Stop giving people doing the work for them, taking their power away, and expecting them to treasure their recovery. I value my recovery because I did the frickin' work. It's hard. It's still today, 12 years later, but I value it. I treasure it. So So stop, stop robbing people by doing the work for them. We're killing them. We're robbing them of their bottom. And to finish out, so humanizing addiction, that's another one of our objectives. Support law enforcement. Chief Lamothe and I spoke at the first, the Montpelier Summit, and then the first two. So we really highlight these embedded positions. Law enforcement can't be everything to everybody. There's skilled people. Sam has been awesome in this community. There's a number of, in across the state. Look at Project Vision in Rutland. They have a great model too. And then political attention. That's the biggest one. This is the time, Brad and I, there's going to be booths for our political parties to be there and be present and hear our voices, right? I will call, I don't know, is Senator Norris here? There he is. I got to call him out only because I finally took the time to talk to him in depth about recovery residences and make sure that he understood why am I so passionate about it. You know, we have a drug endemic, we have a housing epidemic. It houses people in recovery from substance use. And finally, we had a bill that passed. And what a huge blessing. That didn't pass for no reason. It passed from me having to go and take the time to make those calls to make sure they knew what it was and why it's valuable. So the best thing we can do, because it's about solution, we know the problems. The best thing we can do is, like, what's the next step? Go to the summit. All of these organizations, there's 90 organizations. We have organizations coming from New York, New Hampshire, Maine, so they can share about the tri-state model they have, and we can model it. And then also we're highlighting our one-year programs. So yeah, just want to share some solution. If anybody wants a flyer, feel free to see me. I know there's been some handed out. Thank you, Katie. That's all I got. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Robin Bluen. I grew up in St. Albans, and I moved away and was living in a country area for about 15 years. I came back to St. Albans City a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, and I was totally shocked at what has happened to St. Albans City. Brings you to tears what's happened. It's nothing like when I grew up here, when I was married here. I'm living at Willard Mills, and a lot of people know that place. It's not a very well-liked place because everything that goes on in there. What a lot of people don't know is inside the building is beautiful. The apartments are beautiful. And that's why one of the reasons why I'm staying in there with all the crimes, the drug dealings. They were just able to, it took them over a year, they just finally got rid of one of the drug dealers out of the apartments. Now there is another one that is really being seen since the other one's out. Now it's really ramped up of another one that's in there. And I'm not seeing anything getting done about it. I'm hoping it's not going to take over a year to deal with this. As for, you know, they holler up to his place because we just recently had to have all the doors rekeyed in the Champlain housing. All the doors had to be rekeyed, not our apartment doors, but the outer doors. There's 2 locked doors. They all had to be rekeyed. We all had to have new keys. Well, now they're talking about having to do it again. When they closed down the encampment, the tent city, which people call it, a lot of the homeless people decided to come over to Willard Mills and camp out around there. They're there all the time. They go through the dumpsters. They get their drugs from the drug dealer that lives in our building, and then they go into the smoke area and they shoot up in their veins. I don't know if anybody ever looked up what they're shooting up, what it's made of. It's unbelievable what they're shooting up in there. But anyways, it's heartbreaking to see what's happened. And as for somebody saying, one of you said you felt St. Albans was safe. I totally disagree. When I came back to St. Albans, because I was living in a wooded area, and I found myself with no vehicle anymore, couldn't afford one. So, yeah, motor blew in the other one, but, you know, that's my deal. But anyways, I had to move back to St. Albans for transportation reasons. And I made it a habit of walking at 3 o'clock in the morning so I could have my peace and quiet. There's no peace and quiet. You think it's quiet at 3 o'clock in the morning, but there's drug dealings going on. This was over a year ago I was seeing drug dealings. I didn't see this stuff before. You hear the drug dealers, you hear the drug dealers talking about how they're tweaking and they need their drugs, and you know, it's scary out there. People in my apartment was saying, "You're crazy for walking the streets at 3 o'clock in the morning." I said, "This is the beginning, you know?" And I said, "Why?" And they said, "It's dangerous out there." I found out it is. We no longer go for our walks at 3 o'clock in the morning, so I can't have my time of quiet time. And to see St. Albans has fallen like this, as I said, it's heartbreaking. And I'm hoping that it's not going to take a very long time to fix. I would like to be able to stay in St. Albans, but if I have a way out to be able to get a vehicle, I will get out of St. Albans because I don't feel it's safe to stay in St. Albans. And I don't want, you know, other people to end up getting that. People, if everybody moves out of St. Albans, I mean, you know, wanted you to hear what I had to say, and I'm just hoping that we can all work together and do something about this. Thank you.
Phil Belmore, Diamond Street. I want to thank all you guys up there for making the strides you are changing some laws, doing a little backpedaling on some stuff. I just have a comment and an observation. Earlier, my neighbor, who lives ground zero of what's going on at Diamond Street, she mentioned the landlord. This isn't just any landlord, and you guys up front, you know what I'm talking about. This individual, who I will not name, is a high-level official in our, I can't say law enforcement, but it's along that vein. So that's not good optics, guys. That's you need to nip that in the bud pronto. The observation, I hear a lot of backpedaling. Our hands are tied. You know, COVID, which I get, which leads me to observe why did we put these ridiculous laws into place to begin with? You know, $900 bail or whatever it is, catch and release. I know we're overwhelmed, but to have these folks roaming the streets, and I sympathize with what's going on with the drug addiction, but at some point you have to have tough love. It doesn't mean that we give up on treatment, but they have to want treatment. We can't drag them kicking and screaming into treatment. So what are we supposed to do? You know? The other observation is this whole thing, this is my opinion, all started with the misguided defund the police stuff. Now, I admit there's some tragic, inexcusable situations that occurred, but to villainize the entire police of our nation, I think that's a big part of what we're seeing here. Coupled with that, and I know we're not supposed to talk about politics, but guys, this is about politics. We have an open border with fentanyl just pouring through How are we supposed to fix that? I'll tell you how we fix it. November. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Voss. My wife and I moved to St. Albans 21 years ago, and we fell in love with St. Albans 21 years ago, and we are even more in love with St. Albans today. I can't thank all of you that sit up here ahead of me for the amazing work and heart and commitment you have done to this city. It's amazing. The downtown, it's just fabulous. And Judge Rainville, I'm a landlord, and you were the most fair judge. You talk about being a landlord, and trust me, there's slumlords out there. I hate slumlords just as much as you do, but there's a lot of us good landlords out there, and it's really frickin' hard sometimes to get rid of somebody, you know what I mean? And I had a couple of times where I'll just go ahead and say it, some pretty liberal-minded judges, and it was almost impossible to get them out. And the 2 times that we sat in front of you, Judge, you were fair, you were balanced, and we need more judges like you. Thank you very much. Kevin, I don't really know a lot about you, but I've learned a lot tonight, and what I'm hearing, I'm loving. How hard that you're working, and it is a 2 thing, right? It's got to be compassion, but it's got to be tough love too, right? And I appreciate everything that you're doing here. St. Albans does not want to end up being what is now Burlington. How many people in this room, we used to go to Burlington all the time. We never go to Burlington anymore unless I absolutely have to, and all my friends say the same thing, right? And as a landlord, I get so many calls. A lot of new tenants moving up here are like, we're bailing out of Burlington, bailing out of Winooski, we don't feel safe. So we certainly, right, we don't want St. Albans to become like Burlington. And it's all, I understand, it's money, it's resources, but it's, you know, a lot of us are getting more and more frustrated about Montpelier's, the things that Montpelier, a lot of the politicians care about are not the things that we care about. And they love to spend our money on all these other programs that, you know, you're going to, not you, but our taxes are going to go up double-digit next year. We've got this anti-fossil fuel thing that's going to kick in next year. It's like every time you turn around, we're just getting slammed more and more. But again, and it's refreshing to hear that there is some progress there. But I want to know what I can do to help get it into Montpelier's brain that you guys need to look at things differently. You need to, we the law-abiding Vermont citizens here of both persuasions, because conservatives and liberals, most people want a safe place to live and like that. We're not all that far apart, you know, but they seem to have lost that message more and more. And that's got to change because we don't want to end up being like Burlington. Thank you.
Emerson, I'll be real quick. Keep talking to us. And I just wanted to make the observation that a lot of those bills that I talked about, that was a fairly progressive. If you guys think that I'm kind of lefty, liberal, Democrat up here, you should see some of the folks I work with in Montpelier. Pretty much unanimously passing some bills that were frankly kind of tough on crime this year because we heard what you said. So please keep talking to us.
Hi, my name is Danny. My wife and I moved here in 2020, right in the middle of the fun times. You know, we've lived and worked in every time zone because I've had to, in the continental United States, because I've had to live and move for work. So we bought our house here, I'm never moving again, so you're stuck with me. Something that I hear a lot and I've heard in every place, we went from like the reddest of red to the bluest of blue to the reddest of red to the bluest of blue. And everybody has the same knee-jerk reaction. Vote them all out. We got to get the other people in. My parents live in the reddest of red places. Their taxes are twice what ours are. Needles everywhere. The bluest of blue places, the same old thing. And I just think that you have an impossible job, all of you. Because pretty much the gist of what I got from you was we're under-resourced. Well, I just watched the town collectively lose their mind today because of the tax increase. So before we have collective amnesia, everybody's screaming at our elected officials, do something, you need to do more. And they're under-resourced. So if they do something, our taxes go up, let's not maybe lose our mind, just reflexively or pull the lever. This Jersey thing has helped no one in any of the states, in any of the time zones. Trust me, it's so easy to just pull that lever and just change everything. Nothing's changing. So I just want to say thanks to all of you guys because you're working your ass off for us, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, I know we're getting short on time here. Just wanted to say I moved here in 2008 from a big city with a lot of big problems. When I landed here, I thought, you know what? This is your typical quaint little New England town. I got out of the car. Now, this was during the Great Recession. It wasn't all that great when you started walking around and you saw the dog trap on the sidewalks, the used condoms in the street, the baby diapers, even the used tampons, needles everywhere. But eventually, you know, this town had a renaissance. And then it came back really good. Last 4 years, it's really gone to crap in the bucket. It really has. You know, I'm not saying that to be amusing or funny. I'm just letting you know how I see it from being an outsider. You guys got a good thing here. Don't screw it up. Don't let it get screwed up. Now, I got a question for the chief. He said something earlier today that, earlier in this meeting, that a lot of the issues you guys are dealing with, a lot of the calls you're getting are due to hypervigilance on the part of the public. Could you elaborate on that more?
Yes, kind of like I said earlier, I think people are so worried about becoming a victim, because it is happening to a lot of people. There are a lot of legitimate calls, and most of our calls are legitimate. But we are also seeing a lot of calls of people that are just out of place, walking around, have no place to be, and like the one example I gave of the lady sitting in a bush this morning because she was trying to get some shade while she was waiting for her daughter. The call came in that somebody was passed out or overdosed in a bush this morning. Those calls wouldn't have came to us a year ago or even several months ago. Those calls similar to that, or a car being parked someplace where it shouldn't be, or somebody didn't think it should be, we're getting those calls quite often now. And again, people are living in cars now frequently. So their cars parked in places that maybe they weren't there before. Doesn't mean it's illegal, but we're getting called to check on that quite frequently now.
No, I get that. But you guys always say if you see something, say something.
Absolutely. All I'm saying is try not to be paranoid. Try to take a look at it, give us a call. But we're just getting a lot of calls about stuff that just because somebody's walking around, just trying to think about the unhoused population. That's where I'm coming from with that statement. There's a lot of unhoused population that are going to be out of place. Doesn't always mean that they're doing something wrong.
No, I understand that too, but you know, there's a lot of us that have been around the block. We've experienced a lot of things in our past lives. You know, when we see something, doesn't mean that we don't know what's going on.
No, absolutely. There is a lot of crime going on. I'm not discounting that. And a lot of it does come from people being in the wrong place that they shouldn't be. But there's a lot of times that it's not. And like I said, we'll go to calls and we'll check it out. If we get called, we're going to go. But we're getting a lot of calls that aren't what it's being called in as.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Jody White. I am the alcoholic drug addict of a husband that had to go to jail, Melinda's husband. And you can laugh, but in reality, that's what we're here for. So I come up here to give hope, right? That's what it's all about, hope. I haven't had a mood or mind-altering substance in my body in 9 years. You want to flash back to when there was basketball courts in here and I was a little hellion running around up and down this court trying to get out of trouble because there was nothing else to do, and then to sleep in between the cracks, so on and so forth. Judge Rainville, I appreciate you in a big, big way. I put a note in for restorative practices. During my time through the Restorative Justice Center, there was opportunities for restorative practices to take place that helped our judicial system. To your point, you talked about Springfield and New York and the drug dealers that are coming in. I sat in the courtroom many times when drug busts were taken by, and it was always those same states. And my personal opinion, it's a judge's opportunity, and it wasn't Judge Rainville. It was a judge's opportunity to say that this isn't going to happen in my town. This isn't going to happen here, and setting that place so that they move somewhere else. On behalf of Judge Rainville, I'll share a quick story, and this also brings hope. There was an individual that he allowed, this doesn't happen, he allowed to come into his courtroom on a weekly basis. And this was a situation similar just up the street on Diamond Street. And today, that same individual has her daughter back, has a new child that she can take care of. She has her job back, and she reaches out to me on a regular basis. So I want to bring God into this mix, because I look around the room. There's a lot of Christians in this room, and it really comes down to God of revival, and awaken your people and awaken your city. And some people may shun on that, but I'm going to stand strong that as a community, there's a stigma that's attached to the people that we're talking about. And I was one of those people. And it took me to have to go to jail, to be put in timeout for a period of time. I believe in the restorative practice piece of it, but I also believe that there comes a point in time where somebody just has to be put in timeout. And so I will leave you with that. God bless you. Thank you.
We've got about 5 to 6 minutes before the time is that we're going to extend it about 10 minutes, but I would just ask you to keep it brief. Okay?
Mine's going to be very brief.
Thank
My
you.
name is Kay Cook. Sitting here, it brought me back in time a little bit, and it made me think when I used to bartend. Faces don't look familiar, but I bartended at the Zodiac, late 70s, early 80s. Guys, I used to walk home when we closed at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and nothing. It was good. Okay, and look at where we are today. And I know we're working on it. We need St. Albans back. We really do. We can't even walk safely at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Enough on that. My second thought is Saturday, I went over to the Taylor Park. I had a table, chair, and I sat there and I passed out flyers for this meeting tonight. So many of them were very adamant about coming, but I had one particular guy, he shared a situation with me that he has witnessed. And he said to me, it really needs to be addressed. And I said, well, say something. He said, no, I don't dare to. I'm afraid I'm going to be a target. And I said, you know what? You're probably right with that story. You will be a target if it gets out that you said it. So I said, you know what? The old saying is, see something, say something, do it privately. So guys, I recommend highly, do it privately. This poor guy was nervous. He was scared. He didn't want to do anything, but what he told me really needs to be addressed. I hope he takes it to the authorities because, yeah, that's all for me. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for showing up, really.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I live on Congress Street in the new apartments, 25th Street. I understand all the robberies and stuff. I work at Hannaford, and we have people come in there all the time that are sneaking out stuff into the meat and stuff. Like, we have nicknames for the meat person, the the person that buys all the cards, we have names for all the people that do stuff. And my boss tells, hey, watch them, follow them out to their car, so go to watch them. I'm a cashier. I'm not obligated to watch anyone. I'm not the security guard. We don't have any security at my job, so I'm not like obligated to. And even if I find out that they're, what am I going to do? I'm small. I can't do anything. And then that's my first part. And my second part is I went to that meeting Saturday, the one that she talked about. I decided to come to this. She showed us a video of, I think there's a meeting before this. It's on YouTube now. There's a meeting for like in the other room. And we watched that, and I was thinking, oh, I know there's bad stuff, but it's not bad. I went out on Father's Day to go get some food, and I walked out the back way where all our bikes are parked. Someone stole one of my wheels from my bike. Haven't even read that. I read that like once since I got it. I said, okay, the wheel's gone. I'm gonna have to buy a new wheel. Went, got food, came back. The whole other bike was gone. The whole bike was gone. All those bikes now are losing wheels, and they're all gone. I don't know who's taking them. There was a random guy sitting in right by the bikes. I don't know if it was him, but he might have just been homeless. But he was right next to my bike. So, but now all those bikes are stolen. All the wheels are gone, and I had a lock on it, and my lock was through the spokes, through everything, around the whole thing. Cut. I have it with me actually. It was cut in half, and the way I had it was through everything. So he had to take some time to get this thing. I don't know why no one was watching him for how long it took to take that thing apart, but that's just my story. So.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kathy Brannon, and I am from Fairfield. I work here in St. Albans, and I am also a vendor at the Northwest Farmers Market in the Taylor Park every Saturday. And I'm speaking on behalf of our Farmers Market Committee. We are very concerned about the increase in crime that we're seeing around Taylor Park. This past weekend, well, first of all, I want to say that the people that come to our farmers market absolutely love the farmers market. They love the people, they love the products, they love St. Albans. We see a lot of people from out of town, which is wonderful. It definitely drives us to continue to do what we do. However, we are struggling every Saturday with a fear that we have that something could happen. We feel very vulnerable. We have products that are out. We have our money that is right near us. This past weekend, I actually, Mo was saying that, not to be terribly, over the toply worried about things and to be within reason. Well, our market manager and our president, we were noticing some things in the park, so we were all really on alert. And I kept my eyes on some people who were very suspicious. And for over an hour, I watched these people and warned all of the market people that we need to be really careful right now. And sure enough, within a couple hours of observing these people, the two fellas teamed up to distract and take. And we were able to get them to stop, and nothing ended up happening out of it. And thank you to the city police for responding and being there, because they were there, and some things happened after, which were great. Nonetheless, we are still fearful. We are nervous. We would like to work with the city to make a plan. How can we protect ourselves? What are our rights? I'm not gonna lie, I've considered getting a taser. Like, am I allowed to even use one? I don't know, what are we able to do as citizens to protect ourselves, not get ourselves in trouble, but then also to carry about our business that we feel makes our community what it is. And we love our market, and we will all continue to be there for everybody. But we would like some help, and we'd like to work with you guys on that. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Kelly, and I am from St. Albans. I live in the town. I live down by the industrial park. I would like to know why it took the city 30 years to get rid of Tent City. Why we allowed it as a community to sit there and be an eyesore and a place for people to shoot up, live, have their own market, and actually die in Tent City. So I wanted to know what prompted you guys, or the railroad, to actually finally address Tent City, and what do you plan on doing with all those homeless people? Because I now have 4 homeless families living in the back of my yard whom shit and piss in the brook, are burning garbage down there. I have cars that stop, people run to the woods, they come back out. It's an all-night thing. And when are we going to stop giving these people chances over and over and over and over again? That's gotta stop. What happens to 3 counts and you're out? I mean, people are capable of changing their lives, but I'm telling you, criminals are smarter than most of us in here. And by the time that we tweet something, they are already on to their next victim. And plus, trust me, they're watching what we're saying. They know, okay? And I know you guys all know that as well. And we all know that people abuse the system as an excuse to get out of their crimes. We all know that, Mr. Rainbow. Don't we?
Hey, just to, I know we're running out of time here, but I do want to just respond to that comment. You know, one of the things that is still I think a problem in Vermont law that I'd love to see addressed is we have a really, I think, overly expansive expungement statute. And I have found that I actually have a hard time trusting records, criminal records nowadays, because I can't tell anymore whether or not the person has already had a bite or 2 or 3 at the apple and the case got expunged. So to your point, yeah, I totally agree with you. And actually in our office, one of the operating principles we operate on is if you've been there before, if you've been through the system before, we're going to treat you differently the next time you come through. You know, if you have no criminal record and it's a low-level offense, we're thinking about sending it to diversion. But if you've already been through diversion, you're coming back, we're looking at higher and higher penalties as people commit more and more crimes. So just to that point, that's certainly something we look at, and yeah, I'm just going to throw that out there for anyone who's listening, that if anyone's thinking about looking at the expungement statute anytime soon, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. I just had my record expunged, so I know the expungement process, okay? I wrote some bad checks back in the 90s, and I've been on probation for 30 years to pay back $2,000. 30 years. And I have not done anything wrong from that point on. I learned my lesson. I went through the system, okay? I know the expungement, period. They would not allow me to do field trips with my daughter, get a loan, get a car loan, do anything for 30 years until I paid back $2,000 that somebody can just go steal. Now, do you think that's fair? I had to wait all this time. I am now 50 years old and can now say I am not a felon, and I've gone through the expungement rules. Okay, I know how it goes. So don't discuss that. That is way beyond. I've been there, okay? I've been around full circle. And my daughter's growing up in this town, and I worry about her future. And this did not start at COVID. It started with technology. things can spread like that. Good, bad, and ugly. Let's get our shit together, okay? Our future depends on it. You're welcome.
Good evening. My name is Mike Goslin. I live in St. Albans City. I'd like to start by saying thank you to our police officers. I think they do a wonderful job. They're challenged on a daily basis, and my personal opinion is that they're understaffed. St. Albans could use a lot more officers if we're going to have a good community. Secondly, I'd like to say thank you to our city manager, Dominic, for taking the initiative to clean up Tent City. I'm sure that was a big undertaking and a lot of struggles to get it done. I did participate in some of that, and I'd just like to share with people that there are drugs being sold there every day. My personal opinion is those aren't homeless people. Those are drug addicts and drug dealers. As well as watching children go in there on a daily basis all day long, buying drugs and leaving. I can attest to that. I saw it happen. Do I believe that stuff wasn't being made in there? I don't believe that. I believe it was being made in there. So thank you, one, for cleaning it up, and two, I think we got to come up with a different solution, because just pushing them around is not going to resolve the problem. They probably need to be, I don't know if we're using our correctional facility to its max, but we need to take people and put them into jail and let them dry out and recoup and then get into a program. Just pushing them around is not going to do it. It gets them out of the city, that is correct, but it's a problem. One other thing I'd like to address is to Mr. McCarthy. You know, there's been a lot of money this year thrown around, basically trying to unseat an elected official. I don't know what that is. I'm sure it's in the millions at this time. I think that money could have been much better spent. Also, the facilities that you guys are trying to do where it's a safe zone for people to shoot up. Don't agree with that at all. Waste of taxpayer money. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Adam Pace. I live in the Congress Street Apartments. My building is a locked building. I was wondering, is there anything in the works to protect locked buildings? Because I fear every night of someone coming in somehow getting into my room. I have valuables I don't want to lose. Is there anything going on legislative-wise to protect our locked buildings that people can't access keys somehow? Because I know that one of the people that lives in our building, she's got people come in and out all the time, and she gave keys to these people, and I want to know what's going to happen, if there's anything happening, to protect these locked buildings. Is there anything?
So I think one of the things that we're going to be prioritizing in this next session is going to be landlord-tenant law, and to make it easier to evict people who are violating their lease. It sounds to me like the kind of behavior that you're talking about with the person that's letting people who aren't supposed to be in the building come in and out and potentially, you know, have access. It might be somebody who's violating terms of their lease and, you know, just the social contract with people in their community. We've got problems with our landlord-tenant laws that I think could help with that. I don't know all the trespass laws. I'm not a criminal justice expert, so I'm going to leave some of that stuff to the chief and others.
So we are getting calls about that, particularly at your building and some of the other large buildings. We can respond up there, and we can ask people and trespass people that are in the common areas. If somebody's been invited in, like if you invited somebody to your apartment, the landlord can't trespass a guest from your apartment. That's on you to do that, and it has to be agreed upon by other people in the building. So it becomes very sticky and very hard. It's incumbent upon the owner and the manager of the building to restrict the access. It's nothing that we can control. We can't control access to your building. But we can trespass people that have absolutely no right to be there. And we can help keep them out. But the problem is when they're invited in, that's where it becomes very difficult. And that's exactly what we're seeing happening in a lot of the buildings is one person get invited in, they bring friends with them, and we're trying to track down how they got permission to be in there, and then it becomes a problem with can they be arrested for trespass? And then we're sending a case to the SAs that may not have have the best evidence. We may find out in the long run they were invited by somebody within that building that has rights to that hallway. Kind of sticky, but that's where we're at.
I appreciate it.
And actually, could I follow up on that briefly? I mean, and this goes to not only your question, but I think something that's come up repeatedly tonight, which is, you know, if you are encountering what you think is a crime, I would suggest you call the police, because, you know, at least then a case gets started, there's an investigation started, there's a record of it. It may not lead to a viable case that night or that day, but eventually it may lead to something. And if you don't call the police, we got, you know, my office never gets anything to look at, right? So, so I'm not gonna, you know, I think I don't want to repeat what the chief just said about the challenges with those cases, but I would suggest if you think a crime's going on, call the police.
Will do. Thank you.
My name is Dave Pratt. I moved to St. Albans 12 years ago, and I retired here. And I can safely say it's the best thing I ever did in my life. Currently, I moved to Franklin, and I never met a rain bill I haven't liked yet. So they seem to populate the area, so I have to be extremely careful what I say to them because it does get around. I'm also would like to identify myself as working with Mike Manahan on the St. Albans page, which is a Facebook page, which initially when all this went down, a lot of people overreacted. We think but we allowed them to voice their opinion. It has curtailed a lot, and what we kept saying and what we tried to do is always post the positives, whether through photos or through what people do in this town. There are children in this town that are growing up, and they're doing, it's a miracle what people do. And we say that addressing on social media issues or problems is not a way, you can have a discussion, but addressing it specifically on the social media page does not rectify things. Rectifying things is what we're witnessing here tonight, talking to you folks, and I thank you.
Here we are at the end of the line. I am Grace, and I'm here on behalf of the Hardack Recreation Center and the Aldous Hill and Playground. I want to thank you for the uptick in walking policemen on Main Street. That was great to see a cop come in the store. That was fantastic. And I see the patrolmen often in my very long walks from one end to the other. I'm very active. What's happening up at Aldous and Hardack, now I understand. A few weeks ago, sorry, brain injury. A few weeks ago, I noticed 3 men coming out with sleeping bags and was concerned because I enjoy my recreation at the Hardack Aldous rec area. And when I went in the next day for a hike, there were bags which definitely proved to be homeless people leaving their food and clothing and other items at the Congress entrance. And the next day, as I was coming back from a walk up the, is it Isham or Isham? Isham entrance, there was a little ways up the trail, another pile of clothing and food. And so I told Lee at the office, and we worked on getting that picked up. Public Works picks up the Congress, that road section. It wasn't until a few days ago, last week actually, that I picked up a very large bunch of clothing because the schools were there. And I didn't have a black bag with me, but the schools were there. And these children don't need to see this. So, a little strength training there. I carried this bundle of very wet clothing and items up and over the hill down to the rec center. And we talked about how they will continue to reach out to Public Works and law enforcement. As we're cleaning up, which I do regularly, I don't mind a bottle or some tissue, and I'm even starting to appreciate that if I'm the one that has to pick up the dog poop, so be it. But this morning was very concerning to me when I got to a section where usually the birds are singing chaotically. It's so beautiful up there. But as I got closer to this one section where there's lots of big ledges and boulders, it became silent, which is so unusual for the Aldous Hill. And as I sat down, contemplating what was making the birds so quiet, and I was looking around, I could make out, oh, there's a tent. Oh, there's a tarp. Oh no, this is not happening in my park. So I got my black bag out and I packed up all the camping equipment and took it over the hill and down to the rec center. And Lee and I would like you all to know they're in the woods. And our children come up there on their bikes by themselves. Children, elderly people, dog walkers, families. We need our woods protected so we can recreate safely. Thank you.
We can't hear you.
What?
Your mic is off?
Better now? No. There you go. Thanks. Complicated stuff. Now, the gentleman in the green shirt who spoke just a minute ago, I think, put his finger on this when he said, you don't solve problems any other way than how we're solving problems tonight. And as moderator, I really want to say thank you, not only for your attendance, because this was a large meeting, but also for being as articulate as you were in terms of your concern, but also, most important, how respectfully you did it. And that was very important, and I do believe that this is how you solve problems. I also I'd love for you to offer a hand to the gentleman and lady up here today who work so hard and really, have the city's best interest at heart. Give them a round. And then, lastly, it's from the group up here. I think that we asked to really understand and say to you, thank you. I mean, this was an extraordinary meeting and a lot was accomplished, and this is just the beginning. So thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you.
Bye.